I had an email from Paul saying that he was going to be here, so I think we'll give him a couple minutes if people don't mind.
That's what.
Which I found, did anyone else?
Well,
I got him.
Did you get him?
And you could open them?
yes.
On the city site too?
No, on
No, I
the
didn't.
city I did not.
Oh,
I
I
don't
don't
open
at the city site?
I don't know.
I didn't even.
I sent them both ways.
Yeah, I know. On my Gmail site, it said it was corrupted and couldn't be
Oh.
opened. And on the city site, it just never opened. I just got a blank screen for the longest time, so
Is that an
I've not had a
extra?
chance to review your
You can have
minutes.
it.
Okay.
Would you like the other two?
Notice of meeting and agenda.
Need some coffee.
Did you
Oh,
get
the
it?
minutes I
Which is
printed
gonna
off
change.
already.
Can I make a
Yeah,
comment about
I got it.
receiving your, you're receiving your minutes?
Yes.
Are you sending those in a doc file? A Word, I mean.
Yeah, it's in,
Microsoft?
I think it's in Word.
Okay, if it's a doc file, some virus scans like McAfee defaults that that's a scannable document, and if you haven't set your scan parameters properly.
And deliver them.
You know what, Carl? Carl, you're really pushing your luck
That's
here.
Let's
You're
let's
gonna
not have this on tape.
He's gonna get me pissed off.
Good to know that my email at the
We got that on
courthouse
tape, by the way.
didn't scan it.
Here he comes.
I didn't think it was a large.
Hey, Paul, how are you? How's the plumbing business?
The wall is still open.
Okay, we're gonna try to get out of this meeting early so we can all go over to your house.
I come up with a
I
solution.
brought my torch.
He's good. Whenever you ready to start?
We ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
Let's roll.
Okay, I'll call this meeting to order and ask that the secretary call the roll.
Sure. Joan Mead.
Here.
Ed Torian is going to be absent. Robert King.
Here.
Peter Bezade is here. Diane Cervella is going to be absent. Carla Morano.
Here.
Paul Swenson. Here. Mary Cronin is going to be absent. And Mary Comstock.
Here.
Okay.
Can we waive the minutes?
Peter, do you want to go over the minutes from last meeting? Do you have them?
I do.
You were able to open them?
I sent them.
Excellent.
If
It
you
usually
want.
works.
At our last meeting on March the 10th, 2008, we had a discussion. We unanimously accepted the minutes from the meeting held on February the 25th. The commission heard and accepted input from the public. Several people spoke. Joe Yersh spoke. Lynn Waller spoke. We received and acknowledged a letter from Jametta Smaha. The commission also heard a lengthy discussion from Dennis Alpern regarding the capital budget process and the capital needs of the city of Danbury. We interspersed our discussion with him with comments and also a discussion with David St. Hilaire, who's the finance director of the city of Danbury. The commission engaged in a discussion with its counsel, Eric Gottschalk, who distributed, among other things, the City of West Haven Charter, and there was some questions regarding the parking authority and certain special acts of the state legislature empowering the parking authority. Finally, the commission discussed and voted on the following. Unanimously voted to add a discussion of the special acts and the parking authority to the night's agenda, and we did not vote on a motion by Mr. King to raise the annual amount of the bonding permitted without a referendum to $5 million. There was no further business, and we adjourned at about 9:20 p.m. Those are my minutes of that meeting.
Okay. Any corrections or additions? Then the minutes stand as read. Now, if there's anyone interested, we'd love to hear from the public. Seeing none, we adjourn the meeting. Oh, I'm sorry. Please come up, tell us your name and where you live, please.
I'm Joel Urice, 44 Olympic Drive, Danbury, resident and taxpayer. I'm not going to address the city clerk. I'm going to however the wind blows on that, I don't care. But on the bond issue that was discussed at the last meeting are the bond limitations before referendum. I was a little concerned during the course of the last meeting that it was really getting off point and getting into how should we be administering the government as opposed to what the parameters are on the people who are supposed to administer the government here. But towards the end of the meeting, it did get directly back on point. Motion made, failed for lack of second, but still back on point. I thought it was an interesting discussion that ensued in between those 2 points. I just like to say that the purpose of the charter, or the limitations that's currently in the charter on bonding limits that do not go to referendum or are not required to go to referendum, is really there to address minor capital issues that arise. Roofs, a few cars for the police department, whatever. So it's in the unanticipated stuff. However, it's turned into an entitlement, and every mayor in my memory has used that as just, this is my free bond money, I don't have to go to the public when I'm going to spend it. So keeping that in mind, that it's treated as entitlements, raising the bond limit to some larger amount to be concerned with those big projects that might pop up, that's not what it's going to be used for. Practically speaking, history doesn't support that. It's going to be used as an entitlement. So thinking that this is really for the smaller, unusual projects, the things that are not huge commitments to the taxpayer community, I would say you need to keep a good lid on that amount that doesn't go to referendum. Now, the mayor has requested $2 million. I've heard $2.5 million bounced around here, $5 million, 2.5 times 4 to 10 million, all kinds of numbers. I think the mayor's request for $2 million is certainly reasonable. $2.5 million gives him a little more latitude. But if we get much more than that, it gives whoever is in the corner office, with the cooperation of the supermajority on the council, a lot of latitude to spend money on things that doesn't get as much scrutiny as perhaps they should, considering this as a long-term commitment to the taxpayers. This is not an annual budget that in 2 years you could throw the whole troop out and start over with something reasonable. You're committed. You're committed for 10 years or 20 years, that debt service. There was also concern expressed, well, what about the big emergency? What about the bridge that washes out? How do we address that? If we can afford to do the project, that's the first question. I mean, you might have a permanent detour if the city can't afford to do the project. But so far as availability of funds, as long as the city is healthy financially, there's a $30 million contingency fund out there in different accounts sorted around the balance sheet. That's there for those kinds of purposes, contingency. And it is drawn on every year a little bit at a time. If you can't afford, you don't have enough resource to do that kind of a project in a true emergency, if you really would have to replace that bridge before you could go out to referendum. If you don't have the money to do it, you've got no business floating bonds to do it, because you're not financially healthy enough to support that bond float. That's personal opinion. So there's no lack of funds to take care of the big, real emergency. The only risk in that scenario, if it ever came to pass, was what if the voters later don't approve the referendum? Well, what happens if you funded it out of current operations? So that's a voter's choice. Fund out of current operations or go long term. That's always their choice. Let's see. I've already talked about the limitations. Oh, the final thing is, I guess there's been some multiple interpretations of whether this limit that does not automatically go to referendum be per project or per annum basis. If it's going to be a controlling factor in the charter, it has to be on an annual basis. Any attempt to define projects is just going to turn into a bunch of minutia in the charter subject to interpretation. If you say it's per annum, it's per annum total. It's been administered per annum for years and years and years. The wording indicates that it's per issue. I think that's the actual word, debt issue or something similar. I don't have the charter in front of me. And I think the intent of the last charter when that word got in was probably per annum. It's been administered that, it's been understood as that, but we need to clearly define that is the limit we place on an administration to spend non-referendum debt, long-term debt, on behalf of the taxpayers. I still don't have an objection if you tied it to a CPI, but after some of the discussion from the Director of Finance earlier, I'm kind of inclined to let's get back to just define the amount. Enough latitude to recognize the current and a little bit in the future on how much we need. But I think $2.5 million per annum is more than adequate for any mayor to administer this government without going to referendum. The worst argument I heard the whole night in the last meeting about raising the limit high was that it gives the mayor an opportunity to do things for the city, fix things that might not be politically popular, and he would be afraid to take them to referendum. Well, my goodness gracious, all the more reason to take it to referendum. The taxpayers are the people that pay the bill. We elect officials to administer our tax money and run the government. You don't want to give anyone a free hand. And so, again, back to $2.5 million on a total annual basis, I think is super.
Thank you.
Just a point of clarification, Joel, if I
Yeah.
may. Your last statement about you had heard that the concern was that the mayor wouldn't go out and perform some of these projects because of fear of going to the public for
That was a
referendum.
comment was made in some of the discussion. I'd have to go back to my notes to say who specifically made it. I could do that if you would.
I think I heard that differently, just from my perspective. What I thought I heard was that was the factor that was causing a backlog of the capital projects. That, because that inhibited some of these actions, that it wasn't happening because of that. Not that the mayors wanted a higher dollar amount in order to avoid going to a referendum.
No,
I
that
haven't heard
that was not what I was trying to say. I thought I agree the way you and I think this is a matter of semantics. That projects don't get done and they stay undone because popularity, don't want to go to the people with this particular project. But that was tied into the discussion of expanding the amount of non-referendum bonds so some of those projects could be done. That was the way I interpreted the net of that conversation.
Okay.
Maybe I misinterpreted it.
Good. Thank you. I do want to take a second. I was remiss. I should have told you at the beginning of the meeting that Jean Natali is not available to be here tonight, so we will not be having the discussion with her around the idea of the city clerk's office. You're still free to comment on that if you would like, but if you were here specifically for that, she's not available tonight. We will get it scheduled. There will be notice, and we will do that. Okay, anybody else like to speak? Lynn, you can sit there. It's fine if you'd like.
Okay.
But nobody knows who you are, so please tell us your name.
My name is Lynn Waller,
Where do you live,
53
Lynn?
Highland Avenue in Danbury, and the In Our Opinion Show. I also wanted to ask you to limit how often the city is allowed to borrow money. I'm really concerned whether it's 500,000 or 2 million, if it's going to be per project. Projects can add up, and as you see, there's a whole list of them, and it really concerns me. We could get into debt quickly if we don't limit how often. I also heard conversation about, well, we don't want to force people to go to referendum because that's an expense and time and that sort of thing. I look at any major project that's going on in this city is going to go through all sorts of machinations first. There's going to be the construction drawings, the engineering drawings. There are going to be and have to be 1 or 2 public hearings for each one. During that period of time, you could be drawing up referendum papers to go to referendum because democracy costs money. I would rather vote, whether I vote yes or no, on an issue and at least know it went to the public, we had our chance to speak, and if you take that away from the automatic referendum or put it into a petition for money, I think that's completely wrong and it takes it out of the taxpayers' hands. I also, a lot of what I heard last week, I left here cross-eyed. I didn't understand what was going on. It was very confusing. I am concerned if you try to label or push this with per capita, per annum, per whatever, the average taxpayer who is going to be upset with something in the future, coming in to read that charter, and I have my own copy because I've been reading it since '91, isn't going to understand what you're talking about. Try to keep it in layman's terms so that we all understand what's going on out here. You financial folks understand what you're talking about, but I'll tell you, the average Joe doesn't. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from commissioners? So anybody else from the public, please?
Margaret Mitchell, 2 Park Place, Danbury, Connecticut. Although I'm only a taxpayer, I'm not a legal resident, but that's where I'm staying while I'm here. I'd say ditto on everything they said, but I'd also like to thank you. Talking about the bonding or talking about the capital budgeting, or I don't know where we're supposed to discuss that, but I think the capital budget system is broken in Danbury, and it isn't the kind of wording that you're trying to put in the charter, because I don't think it'll go past the voters if you change it too drastically. But at the same time, I'd like to see the city do some strategic planning and a lot more of capital planning. The planning department reviewed the capital improvements budget, but then the planning board itself was expected to review that in half an hour. I don't know how far in advance they had copies of that. I've been following that since '89 because of the East Ditch flooding, and been getting a copy of the capital improvements projects over that time frame. And if something is I don't want to use the word sexy, but if something is an issue that catches the voters' imagination, it appears to get into the capital plan rapidly. If it's dull, boring, and routine, like some of these brooks in the East Ditch have flooded forever, that's why it's called Swampfield, then it just sits there. You can be in the capital budget for 20 years and never move forward. Just move back every couple years and move out of there. So if the mayor were to appoint an advisory board on strategic planning to help Dennis Elprin, he's very qualified, but he's only one person. If the job of the treasurer was slightly changed, it says in the current charter that the treasurer shall be the agent and treasurer of the Capital Improvements Fund. Frankly, I don't know exactly how that works or if it works at all in the public interest, but I do think we need financial planning, and otherwise you can rubber stamp checks nowadays if we trust our controller, which I have no reason not to do. I mean, we still have our treasurer come in and sign all the checks, and he's supposed to make sure that there's purchase orders and so on and so forth. And to the best of my knowledge, they do that. I know Tom Green, because I'm a Green, he's a Green. He always came in here. He'd come here every day and go into the controller's office and look at things. I don't know what Mr. Dowdy's doing. But maybe when you readjust that job, maybe that's a way to have some more capital improvements, budgeting, and strategic planning. Because as wonderful a planner as Mr. Elprin is, he doesn't get to plan, he only reacts usually. And his staff only reacts usually, and I don't really feel that they truly plan and chart the future of the city. The other hot potato I wanted to go to was the city clerk. I have stood in outside for long periods of time praying that someone would come to get me the documents from the city clerk's office. The city clerk is paid 40-something thousand a year. I don't know whether they don't have to meet office hours like the paid professional staff or the civil service, because they aren't covered by that, so they can choose their own hours as long as they get the job done. And according to the current charter, she's responsible for publication of notices of hearings and public ordinances as may be necessary. Well, if she's only in charge of that, and she isn't the true stenographer and minute taker of this common council, then I don't know if she needs to be paid $48,000 a year. And as more and more things are put online, so that people that are computer literate can get them off the internet, this is not personal. This is just, I've been through numerous city clerks in my life, and for me, it was a nice thing that if I called before I came and made sure somebody was in the office, I could get a paper copy, because I am so dyslexic that getting it off the internet is just, I wouldn't even find any of the problems that Mr. Uri says there are, because I just type it in dyslexically and never see anything. But if we're going to move into the modern era, then I think you should look at readjusting both the treasurer's office and the city clerk's office. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions or comments, anybody? Anybody else from the public that would like to address us? Seeing none, then, we will move on with our agenda.
Might be a good time to add to the agenda.
I'm sorry?
I think we might want to add to the agenda.
All right. If we want to add something to the agenda, Peter?
It's my understanding that Mr. St. Hilaire is available to talk to us, going back one more time to Section 7-10 of the Charter. So if he has something to say, we should add him. So I move that he be added as an agenda item to be discussed tonight. I don't believe it's going to take much time.
Okay. The motion has been made. Is there a second?
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion's passed. David, if you would like to address us? We're going to talk about this, till we get it right.
Oh, wow. Well, that's
Yeah.
that's a good thing.
Come on, join the
Maybe
group.
As I mentioned to this gentleman here, it's like watching sausage be made.
You gave me a great compliment when you said I was talking like a taxpayer.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I'm going to hand out something that we discussed with our bond counsel. We came up with something a little bit creative here, and hopefully that's meant in a good way.
Thank you.
And it's something that hasn't been done in any other city to our knowledge, our knowledge here. I think it addresses all the concerns that we discussed at the last meeting, in addition to this gentleman's concern.
There you have a copy.
Oh, sure.
Thank
I'm running out of copies, but this is my last copy. I can keep this one on. Good. Okay. It has a three-phase approach, similar to what I discussed at the last meeting. And the first one would be, again, a per-issue approach on the amount. Now, the amount I left blank here. The amount would be determined based upon a percent of the taxable grand list, all right, which would change, of course, every year. And the taxable grand list goes up every year, or down, hopefully not down. We haven't seen it go down. But it does change a sizable amount every 5 years when there's a reval. Okay? Now, there's two parts of this. There's the per issue amount, and then there's a maximum amount per year before a mandatory referendum is triggered. Okay? Now, the mandatory referendum, and I left those amounts blank because that's what I wanted to discuss with, in addition to the other items, but I figure I'll leave those blank for now, and I do have some proposals that I'll discuss with you in a second. But the concept is that on a per issue basis, up to a certain amount that would be a percentage of the grand list, taxable grand list, would be basically without referendum. If it exceeds that amount, provided it's under the ceiling for the year, then it would be on a permissive referendum. You would have to go out and get 3% of the electorate and submit it to the town, or to the council, and go through that process that we discussed prior to this. And if collectively, throughout the course of the year, we exceed another percent, which is above the total amount for the year, then it's a mandatory referendum. Even if it's a $500,000 bond, then we would have to go for a referendum. Now, the concept that we talked about before, you know, I think this deals with that. You know, we can't go out with all these small issues and have out-of-control debt. All right? There is public review, and, you know, there's accountability, there's control, and it allows flexibility. It actually forces us to plan much further ahead in the during the budgetary process. Because the last thing we want to do is put ourselves in a position where, if we are in fact at this time of year, something comes up, we don't want to put ourselves in a position where, if we need $1 million, that we're going to have to go out for a referendum, or $500,000 for, let's say, a bridge. So hopefully we're doing our budgetary, the stuff that we're very much aware of early on in the process, maybe even a year in advance, that we can prepare for those properly, like we should be doing now. And truly, the only things that should throw us over the limit are those surprises, or those emergency items. I'm not going to say surprises, because I'm really, let's stick with emergency items. All right? Those are the things that really should be the triggers that throw us over the limit. Now, the limit, as I said, is going to be based upon the grand list. The grand list does change every year. And because we're talking about a fraction, a small fraction of the grand list, it's not going to go up very much. And glasses here. And I'll give you an example. If we were to use 0.0020, these are decimal points, not percentages. 0.0020 of our last year's grand list of $5 billion, $5.4 billion, that would give us about $10.9 million to work with.
That's the cap?
Yeah, 10.9. Okay, for the year.
Is that the budget and?
That would be the annual cap before a mandatory referendum would be triggered.
But
Now-
that's not your everyday budget that they present. This is just
Oh, no, no,
referendum
no.
money.
No, this is capital.
This is essentially the capital budget.
Yeah. Okay. Now, the per issue, we would use another formula. And that would be, or could be, I should say, you could say 0.25 of that, and that would be 2.7 million. So in other words, you could go out 4 times a year for $2.7 million.
That would be like a project cap,
Right.
or projects,
Right.
okay, if bundled.
And if you exceed that at any one time, or collectively, for 10.9 million, you know, if you exceed it one time, then that's going to trigger and I keep saying the optional referendum. What's the term we've been using?
Automatic.
Well, it's not the automatic referendum, the one where you go out and get 3%.
Oh, petition?
The petition referendum.
No,
All right.
that is not in existence right now.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
no,
another
this is the
community.
interim period before the cap. The cap would trigger an automatic referendum at 10 million.
So this would
At
trigger a
10.9.
3% referendum,
Right.
Okay,
If you
so
exceed it on any
if
one
you-
project.
the 2.7.
Right, on
Okay.
any one project.
So this would be a referendum,
Right,
okay? 3% is signature generated,
right.
citizen generated. Got ya.
Now, if collectively you exceed the 10.9, even if it's $500,000, if something throws you over, then you're going to be required to go out for referendum. Because there's got to, and I think there's consensus, and I don't think you'll find anybody that disagrees with that there needs to be a cap.
Mhm.
So.
I think more.
So it's
Well,
like a two-step process, David, right?
It may sound like, a lot, but what it does, it smooths out the process, the capital plan. And I want to, right now, those projects are either being funded. Let me back up a second, if I may. Those projects are either being funded by the operational budget, or they're not being funded at all. And part of the problem with funding it in your operational budget is you may have these long-term projects or long life projects being funded in your 1-year budget. Now, those things should be funded over a longer period of time. It should be basically spread out. And the reason why we're not even paying for it or doing them is because we can't afford to spread them out. That's why we're not throwing them into our operational budget, because it would cause our rates to go like this. That's why it's important for us to try to work out something better than what we have currently, to try to smooth out our payment stream. It's not to escalate our debt load and to be irresponsible with that. It's actually to the contrary, it's to be more responsible. And hopefully this structures it so that we have enough oversight and keeps the cap. Believe me, I like the oversight, because I don't want anyone sitting in, whoever is after me, or, up in the 3rd floor, to be able just to say, well, let's do this and this and this. The more controls over there, the better for all of us. So I think it's important that, we establish the set process. We leave enough room to give flexibility to whoever is managing the city at any time over the next 15 to 20 years, because that's how long we're going to be living with this next charter. That flexibility to manage those projects that have an escalating cost. And bonding is a big part of the way we do business. And it's not just for those mega dollar projects either. It could be for replacement of the dump trucks or the plow trucks and all these other things. Right now, it's getting increasingly let's say the police vehicles. It costs about $50,000 to $60,000 just for one of those things. We're talking about replacing 12 to 17 of them this year. That's very expensive to do, but they have a longer than 1-year life. So if we do it right, we should be able to, and I hate to use the term bond, but use some other funding mechanism, which means a longer term than your annual budget. And that's what we're trying to do. So,
David, if I
yeah.
can just, deal with the concept and not the numbers for a moment. which could be a little frightening. If we look at just at the concept, what I'm hearing is we could take a look at it on a project basis, and if a project exceeds that amount, could go to referendum. You're suggesting it goes to a 3% referendum on a signature basis,
Right.
as opposed to an automatic referendum.
Yep.
That's something perhaps that we could deal with.
Yep.
The other thing is that I like about it is I like the principle of having a cap. Today, where there are no caps.
Right.
And in reality, if I'm reading the charter correctly, the mayor, with the approval of the common council, can write up to
$500,000 projects every
Right.
month if you want.
Right, exactly. He can put $20 million in a year, and he doesn't have to go to referendum,
In theory, right?
as long as he keeps it below the $500,000.
I doubt.
So I like the idea of the cap. The grand list is an interesting point. Whatever the percentage we decide to use, that would define what the cap is. So you could very well, reduce the cap if that is an issue and a concern among people. I like the project idea. Now, the other thing that I'm wondering, how this affects our overall indebtedness, and how does that play to the bonding folks? Would this improve our image as a city with regard to bond ratings if we adopted something like this?
I think it would, because for one, as I mentioned before, they want to see us investing back into the community. Right now, they see a very long list of capital projects, our capital plan, that is essentially very underfunded. We do only the essentials and only the hot crisis items. And the other ones, we may throw a bone to once in a while. The rating folks are bonding, and that's who we're really talking about here. They want to see a long-term commitment because they know it's going to come sooner or later. And you know what? It may come when we're not prepared for it. And it's going to be, we're not going to be financially prepared for it. So if we set up the ability to help us fund that plan, then they see, oh, well, then you're better prepared to handle those things in the future. Right now, we're not. So they look at it as a positive thing, not a negative thing.
One other thing that I think would go hand in hand with this kind of a concept was a more disciplined approach to capital budgeting.
Right.
I hate to digress back into that conversation, but I think it's woefully lacking, quite frankly.
Well, and the reason being, quite honestly with you, is because there was, it wasn't funded. What's the point of putting a lot of effort into it?
But it's a chicken and egg. You have to have a
chicken and egg, right.
plan
Exactly
in
right.
order to go to bonding or have some financial structure in which to finance that capital plan.
We were, right, I mean, you said it all. I couldn't say it any better than that.
Any other questions or comments?
David, who wrote this? Proposal.
Frank DeCole, our bond counsel.
He's the, okay.
He did a phenomenal job, and as I said, it is an original. We discussed it, went back and forth. And, after our last meeting, I discussed the concerns that we had here, and the concerns I also, I shared with them your concerns we had. And I said, there's they're very legitimate, and we need to come up with something on that, because I think there's middle ground here. It's just coming up with the right mechanism that allows the flexibility, and that shows that there's control and that there's accountability. And those three things are very important to all of us. So,
Okay.
all right.
I just have one other question. Can we just do a summary of this?
Yeah.
We're talking about here setting a specific amount, a cap on the amount that can be bonded
Based, and it,
based on the grand list.
Griff's.
Based on a
Okay.
percentage of the grand
Right.
list.
not a percent, a decimal point,
A decimal
Right.
point percentage of the
Right.
grand list.
percentages. The reason why I don't use percentages is because if you happen to miss, if it's not typed in to the charter properly, it could really mess you up. So you use decimal places.
Okay.
So David, I guess the most useful thing would be, the grand list approximately of the city of Danbury as of this moment is what, 5.4 billion?
Yeah, yeah. High point, yeah. 5.5, right. Close enough.
Okay.
Okay, so we're setting the cap.
And that's before the reval. We're working out the reval. The reval adds up, brings up to about 7.6 or so.
So the reval as of October 1, 2007, is $7.6 billion.
Right. But they've got to take into account all the, the grievance process and all that other stuff, so it's going to change.
So in addition to rewriting words or correcting words, we have to do a little calculation if we adopt this approach.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, this is too much for me.
You understand that?
Yeah.
I don't expect, I just wanted to
Yeah,
present it
the-
tonight, because I know I'm springing this on you. Food for thought.
We wanted to vote on it, but this is far too complex for me to figure out in a hurry, so thank you, but.
I wasn't gonna press it on you at all. I just wanted to introduce it to you,
Yep.
and I'm always available to answer your questions.
David, can I ask a couple of,
Sure.
do you have another meeting? Because I know you were pressed for time.
Just doing the budget.
Okay.
So,
So then.
Can I finish my question now?
Yes, Joan, I'm sorry.
Okay, so we're setting the cap, and then what we're also doing is setting a mini cap on each issue for
a
bonding.
cap per issue and an annual cap.
Okay, so if the cap per issue
Is exceeded.
is exceeding what the total cap is, that's an automatic referendum thing you're talking about.
If the cap per issue is exceeded, then
Right,
it triggers the.
the 3%,
The 3%.
the petition.
The petition,
Okay.
right.
And then if we go over the cap for the whole year,
That's the
we have a
automatic.
couple of, then that's the automatic. Okay.
The 3% though is people have to go out and get signatures to go to
Right.
referendum.
Right.
So in effect, people have to work
Because they're
to stop
petitioning
it.
that project is essentially what's
Right.
happening.
Okay.
You know, they're saying, hey,
In the balance of power, it's a bad phrase, that makes it easier for the city to go out there because now people have to get involved to stop. If you decided you're doing a bunch of police cars and a couple of fire trucks and got over the 2.7, now someone's got to stand up and go get, how many signatures?
3% instead of 15.
Okay, which is what, 4,500 signatures? Are we thinking there's like 15,000 electors?
It's about 30,000.
So it's nine,
I don't know what that number is. Lynn, do you know what that?
29,000 is what it is.
Registered voters around 35,000.
35.
so we would need three,
But the
ballpark
electors who
3%
are
of
eligible
that.
For bond issue might be a greater number to include
Yeah.
Ms. Mitchell.
Taxpayers.
Okay, so they would need 3% to go ahead and stop it. So we're making it easier for the city to go out and do these things. Okay. Start, but not easier for the public if they want to have a voice in this. I understand that. Okay.
30,000.
Good. I've read partway through the third paragraph.
Well, it's,
So,
you know,
David, we're going to have to work on this a little
and I would
bit.
encourage you to do so. Please don't, I would,
But,
this is not something you make a quick decision on.
yeah, and what I like about what you've done is, you took the notes, and Jonah, you weren't here last time, but Bob had come up with some ideas of trying to get a flexible budget based on the grand list and based on the fair market value, and David had explained to us that the accounting rules for municipalities changed, so that number could move around on us. So they've come back with another idea. We've got to decide if this is the direction we want to go in. Whereas we thought we were going to do a nice round number, be done
Well,
with it, David, but.
This still provides the flexibility and the, as I said, the accountability to control.
David, philosophically, why not go to referendum? If we need 18 new police cars and we need roofs on schools and things,
Right.
why not just go to let's say what I thought we were gonna do is walk in here
That-
tonight and do a $2
right.
million or $3 million number and let the city go to referendum the way we've been doing it. Why do we not wanna do that?
Well, that kind of puts us in a position where we are today. Going to referendum is a very lengthy process, you know, and some people may say, well, it's not that lengthy, you can do it in maybe 2.5 to 3 months. Well, you know, sometimes that's even too long.
Mhm.
And we don't want to put ourselves in a position where if you need to do something quick, whether it's a bridge or a school item or some of these other items, and we need to go out and turn it around and get the bids and do all that, just doing those things, you know, will take a couple months. But if we can't even go out and entertain any of that until we get a referendum passed, or, you know, then we're talking out 6 months and all
Yeah.
this. And my timeline's correct, Buzz?
Yeah.
You know, so you may miss a construction season, you may miss those kind of things.
Yeah.
And it's not because we're anxious to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. That's not the point.
No, that's not,
The point is, you know, we're just trying to operate and do a business here.
Mhm.
And you know, and we're hoping to continue to while doing the business, keep the avenues open so the public has plenty of input,
yeah.
you know, so.
And if we were simply to raise that current $500,000 number to a 2.7 number, just because
Yep.
the per issue you came up with was 2 point, if we simply raised it to that, wouldn't that give you the ability to do the things that you needed to do short-term, and then long-term put together whatever you needed to do? Let's say there was a year where you wanted to go to 10 mil, that in effect you could do 2.7 up front on the emergency stuff or the timetable stuff, and then go out to the public and sell the other 7.3 million.
You say do it per issue and then.
Well, I'm thinking,
do a-
had we done the easy part, and we just said, you know what, we can do, the city can do 2.7 million with a 2/3 vote of the council,
Right.
and that becomes an annual cap. And anytime someone now you decide we really need to go big time. But the 2.7 you could do without going to referendum, so the stuff that you had to do where you're worried about construction timetables or emergencies
Right.
could be handled with a large enough number like 2.7, and then anything else could be done longer term because you need to do another 7.3 to do the bigger projects.
Yeah, sure. I would just, instead of locking in on a number, just lower your decimal point.
Right.
That way it changes with the grand list.
So you're
in
saying,
5 years, when the grand list grows and, you know, it changes with inflation, it changes, just, you know, if you want to make it 2 million, let's adjust our decimal places,
so make it .00,
whatever, yeah, I can.
05, for instance, would get us
Whatever.
somewhere around there. My
Right,
math is
right, and that's why the sheet I presented gave you a couple scenarios, and I can do more if you want. But the point is, it allows the flexibility.
Builds in
for
flexibility
growth.
to a measurable number.
Right. And that's a good point, a measurable number, because we can always go back to the grand list, and that's a number that everybody knows of, you know, and it's published, and it's got to be a % of this, and it's right there.
Okay.
So,
Great.
you know.
Any other questions?
Carl, I have a question.
Yes, Paul?
There's 3 sections of 7.10. I'm understanding that A through D in your proposal only rewrites A and leaves B and C alone to be.
Yeah, let me refresh my memory on the B and C part.
Oh, once you,
Oh, you just to hold on a minute, fellas.
Oh, sure.
If you want to take a minute and read it, B and C are up
Sure.
here. I've got $2 glasses if you need them. Or if you need longer arms, I'll hold it out
My
here.
eyes, they're not exactly,
Just look at the
not the
concept.
same description.
We could take step one. It doesn't have to be a percentage. We could just lock it at $2 million.
Yeah, they pretty
Anything
much
above
stays
that.
the same.
You're back
You
on.
know what, that's, yeah.
Okay. And the cap portion of it, instead of taking the .0020, cut it in half, and you're now at a $5 million cap. once you exceed that, or 6 million. I mean, this number might scare the bejesus out of it. But if you think about the concept, and what I like about the concept, it does apply a cap.
Yeah.
Now, you can disagree with how big it should be, but
Let's have that discussion. I don't think we need to go to a vote. We can vote if people want to vote. But let's
C pretty much stays the same. The only caveat in that is that the school bonds
Are
are
we back on?
permitted to go out 30 years.
You're on.
So what they usually do with that is I'm sorry, are we on?
Yes.
We defer out to the state statute with that. All right.
But that doesn't, and you didn't intend this to replace those two sections?
No.
Just A?
So B and C
Right.
stays, and this,
Right.
all of this
Subject to your
becomes
concern
A.
about the 30 years.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Any other discussions or points people would like to make? Philosophically, do you understand where this is compared to the $500,000 number and things?
Well, philosophically, if you want to have a discussion about it, I'd love to, but I don't know if we require Mr.
Yeah.
Sandelier's presence.
There's no other questions for David then? Okay. Go back, let's sharpen those
Thanks.
pencils
Sure.
on, sharpen
You
those
let me know
pencils
what you
on that
need.
school budget, will you, David?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I wish I could on that one.
could you speak into the microphone about the mill rate?
That's a closely held secret.
David, thank you.
Thank you, David.
We went from having a vote
We
to,
could probably muster up $20 to try to influence you.
It's gonna take a lot more than that.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay,
David.
thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to discuss this a little bit?
I do.
Philosophically, how
I
you
do.
feel about this?
I do. I
Peter?
do want to discuss this. I mean,
Should we put a motion and then put it up for discussion or fine?
just do a motion.
Do you want?
Make a motion, we discuss bonding. I
I
think we have multiple
I-
options
actually-
on the
You know what,
table.
I'll make a motion.
Well,
that
can't we just discuss it because it is on our agenda item?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I guess what I'm afraid of, I don't want a motion to vote on anything, because,
Fair
but,
enough.
but I will entertain it if we're supposed, if you would like to.
I would like to have a discussion on this.
Okay.
All right, this is an interesting proposal. It resolves an issue that we've discussed or we've touched on at various times, which is the fact that the number's always going to change with the passage of time and become outdated. However, it makes a substantial change in how Danbury's little form of democracy operates. It changes it in the obvious way, which is it shifts the burden to the electors to bring a petition at a certain point, which didn't exist before. And when we've talked about this, I've always, the appeal of the city fathers or elected city officials selling something, selling a project to the residents of Danbury, is something that I appreciate and I think is a good one. It means that the public has to get involved in a project. Unfortunately, as we look around, the participation of the public in Danbury and probably other places isn't what most of us would hope it would be. And many people don't get involved. And therefore, a vocal minority or a vocal small group can pretty much, stop most projects. And thus probably the fear of elected officials to bring things to a referendum. But I like it. It's worked in the past. This city has approved many bond issues. In fact, it's hard for me to go back in time to remember when we have failed to approve a bond issue, but it's been quite some time ago since that's happened. We've approved major bond issues for tens of millions of dollars. I just can't believe that we can't do that in the future. I really don't like this because it does shift the burden, and I would just want to change the number in the existing charter, leaving the words alone.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Anybody else? Comments, questions? Paul?
I actually think we can fix that. And I've been fussing with what he's given us. And I think it's sort of a compromise between the two. I would propose you go to section B, and after the word, and take out the petition, if within 30 days. And from there, you take the rest of that whole paragraph out, so that it'll read as follows. Whenever the Common Council votes to authorize bonds or notes in excess of, we gotta come up with either a fixed number or a percentage. To meet the cost, blah, 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 full faith, such authorization shall be subject to the approval by a majority vote of the city electors voting thereon, period. So if it's gonna be in excess, then it goes just the way it does now to a referendum.
So what you're saying is you would put in some percentage,
So it's a per project referendum. So that if the project costs, let's just say we pick $2 million. If the project is more than $2 million, it doesn't go to referendum so that they attack it, or the voters have to. It goes to them for approval. So the city is in the position of selling the project to the people who are gonna be paying the freight. It's their money, they should. And so I would take out the rest of the petition piece because it's not needed. It automatically goes to a referendum in excess of a certain either fixed number or percentage number.
now, but this also, though, had two numbers. One was a per project, and
Right.
one was an annual cap. Would
Well, then you go-
I think he understands that, he's just taking that whole part out.
It just took out this whole section here.
So you're saying we're not doing the per project piece at all?
No, we do the per
we
project
do
piece
it.
up here.
Yes.
Okay.
And then, in any given year, if it goes beyond, so let's say we have $2 million up here.
Okay.
So you have, the mayor then could propose 5 $2 million projects in any given year. He doesn't have to go get a referendum because it's not more than that. We then in C, fix a number, I'll pick 10 million just for round figures. If he exceeds in any given year, the cumulative amount of $10 million, it automatically goes to a referendum.
Anything over that goes to
Anything
referendum.
over,
So just to be clear then, you guys are saying you're comfortable giving the mayor and the council authority to go to 10 million without going to referendum?
no, the
Well,
numbers
okay,
don't mean anything.
Okay, so they're not.
I'm talking about the
okay.
concepts.
All right, good.
I'm talking about the concept.
No, you didn't say that.
Okay.
Did I
I'm
miss
sorry,
you?
I'm sorry, no, I understand. If I misunderstood you guys, I do not want you to get stoned in the parking lot on the way home. So
I just look at it as
I
a,
withdraw my comment. So what you're saying is a per,
I don't think Paul and I are on the same page.
a per project and then a cap, numbers to be determined. With automatic referendum, not with electors having to go out to get signatures for referendum. So at least we know.
Against it, right.
Okay, good. Any other questions? Joan, would you like to be misquoted by the chairman?
Well, you know.
Mary's
what-
smart enough not to say anything, so.
My question to start with was, I really wanted to get clarification on how he was talking about setting this whole thing up. So what Paul is now saying is, he wants like $2 million per project. Okay? If it goes over that amount per project, then it goes to referendum.
Automatically.
Yeah.
Correct,
Okay.
automatic.
But you're allowing this to happen several times up to a maximum. So you're saying that the mayor and the council can go out and spend up to $10 million as long as it was broken up into
Cumulatively.
smaller bites.
Right.
Okay, theoretically, that's, okay.
Right, if it's under 2 million, he can write up to 10 million without going to referendum. Anything in excess of 10 million, he would have to go to referendum.
You know what, Bob, when you say he can write up, he still has to,
With the council.
go through the
The
council.
common
and pass
council,
an
he has
ordinance.
to follow the
And a
process.
really bad project can be stopped right there by a
Right.
different type of referendum, much
Mhm.
harder for the public to do.
Right.
I don't know what those numbers are.
Right.
I think that's a totally separate discussion as to what the per project
Right.
is
And what the cap-
whether they're fixed or a percentage.
So we know
Well-
that these words need to be changed dramatically. Now, now, do you want to have a discussion on numbers, or?
Well, I think I'd like to just continue with the concept for a minute, because I think one important difference than where we're at today is this concept of a cap, because under the current charter, there is no cap. The only cap
Except
that
by grant.
exists is the state statute, which is $947 million of in total indebtedness. Setting a cap, provides the flexibility. Whether the number is right or not of $10 million, I'm not even going to debate that right now. But I like that idea, Paul, of having this cap. He can go up, write issues up to, with the approval of the Common Council, up to $2 million without going to automatic referendum, or the cum effect of all capital budgets up to 10 million. Once it gets to 10 million, if I use that number, then that would trigger anything over that 10 million in any particular year. He has to go to referendum, even if it's $100,000. So
Yeah.
it's a two-step process.
That's right.
And that, I think, provides the flexibility portion of it. I think it's, you know, better than what we have now, because literally, there is no cap. He can write as
It's
many.
self-imposed. It's self-imposed.
Well, the self-imposed cap is, well, I mean, the 500,000 as it is today, he could write multiple issues under that amount and keep writing it, and as long as common council would approve it, he doesn't have to go to referendum.
But they don't do that at this point.
No, but they could.
It's informal.
It is currently
Right.
not the
I don't
practice.
see any limiting language.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
If we change the 500,000 in the current charter to just change that to $2 million, then we have the same situation. He can continue, he being the mayor with the common council, continue to write projects under that amount by $1 and without having any approval via a referendum. By putting the cap in, it stops that.
Yeah, the second section stops,
Right.
it puts to rest any sort of decision-making as to whether
You
it's...
can't get around it.
Yeah, it's
There is
because
a
it's
fixed dollar
cumulative, because it's specifically...
That's what I like about it. Now, whether you think the 10 million or 10.9 is
Right, that's-
too much, that's a subjective thing. You know, I don't know how we resolve that one.
I think we can have a discussion about that. Let me ask a question. We know that they need 17 police cars. Is that one project? And then when they buy 4 fire trucks, is that a second project, all under
what I wanna know.
2 million? And then when they put 3 roofs on schools under 2 million, is that a third project?
You know what, that's not our call.
Right.
You're saying
That's
that's
not
the
our
council's.
debate.
You're saying that's the council?
That's political policy, and they make that all the time.
Okay.
What is a project, what isn't a project?
Agree? And it specifically says, when they authorize by ordinance, so whatever they put in that ordinance is what it's going to be.
So the city council would determine what that is?
Right, whatever the ordinance that's being proposed to the council and I think would dictate.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Anyone want to throw numbers out there, or is this to be tabled and discussed at a later time after we've played with this language a little bit?
Yeah, I think the project, the starting point of the single issue, we've, you know, been talking about a $2 million figure all along. I don't think it's unreasonable to put that at a $2 million figure, that anything with the language, anything over 2 million automatically goes to referendum and not just 3%. I don't like this 3% thing. You know, I think Peter is absolutely right when he says, you know, the way we operate here seems to work very well. We've raised the bar from the 500,000 to the 2 million, which certainly addresses, you know, the inflation factors and everything here. So I think that might be a workable number.
So generally speaking, we like the automatic referendum as opposed to people having to petition for referendum.
Right. And I think that's an easier transition with this kind of a concept.
What do the commissioners think about a percentage of the last grand list versus a fixed number?
I would rather see a percentage than a fixed number.
In both cases, both the cumulative cap and the project cap?
It would last, the document would be effective much longer if we did it by a percentage rather than putting an arbitrary number in there.
So, I like simplicity. Simplicity is if we went to 2.5 million and put language in there that said that was an annual cap, it would clarify any issues. We don't have to worry about the mayor and the council saying we can do 22 of these $500,000 things. So simplicity, I think, makes. We're concerned that this says they could go out 22 times at $500,000 theoretically. Well, we could fix that with language.
Right.
And then the next question is, what number do we put in? If we put in a number, say 2.5 million, I understand 20 years from now, someone's gonna be sitting here doing this
The same
again, saying
thing all
2.5
over
was
again.
nice once, but, okay.
Mhm.
Good discussion.
And actually, if we even put the 2 million or 2.5 million in there and put the word biannual in there, it's gonna create a problem.
What?
They're gonna have to go to referendum more than they have to now.
Right.
So it would be more restrictive than our current policy.
You think the voters could handle a percentage?
Makes it difficult, but it's doable, I'm sure.
You know, I think the thing that, just judging
Yeah.
from the reaction to the room, I
Anybody
think
would care now.
the figure of $10.9 million scares a lot of people. And I think that could.
I don't know why Peter said that.
Well, you know, that's understandable. But it's not to say that they're gonna write bonds every year for $10.9 million either.
Okay.
There's that much delay.
Any other discussion?
Oh, only clarification. You're suggesting we do away with the cap and just do a per issue thing, right? Or are you saying?
Oh, no,
You want a $2.5 million cap,
And anything above that?
period?
That would be the simplest thing, and in effect, all we're doing is updating the $500,000 number to, say, 2.5 million.
And leave everything else alone, just
No, then
update that
I would
number.
put in language that does say that that's an annual.
Annual
So
$2 million.
that now everyone's clear that anything above that, the city's got to sell the project, and then it would be automatic referendum.
Okay.
Okay?
Mhm.
Shall we move on? Since we've all got it, we've got to, I mean, I'm only three paragraphs into this thing, so I don't know what the last 2 or 3 paragraphs said, and I want to spend some time with it, so
So you don't want to address this issue anymore tonight, then?
if someone wants to make a motion, we can have that motion and discuss it and bring it to a vote if you'd like to. You know, it's not,
Yeah, I just to continue the discussion for a moment, we have been through this thing for the past 5 meetings. And, you know, I get a feeling that we're spinning our wheels here. I don't know that there is a reasonable answer. We've looked at many alternatives. Diane has gone in and done research on other communities and what they've done. In some ways, they're more progressive than us. Other ways, we're leading, other manners, we're leading the way. We've looked at different kind of processes to build in flexibility, but have control and have accountability. We discussed the proposal that I brought up last week. There was problems with that. I think this proposal, I like the idea of a cap. I like the idea of the flexibility. I will admit I'm anxious about the dollar amount, but we can solve that just by reducing the percentage. We can make, instead of 10 million, we cut the percentage in half and it's 5 million, you know? That's not unreasonable. We've always played around with this $2 million figure that has been kicked out. You know, I don't know how much more information we can digest on this. You know, I'm feeling a little bit of a frustration, I guess. I like Peter's input. I like the automatic referendum. I don't think it's right that we send people out with signature pads trying to get signatures of people from the supermarket. That's not the way we operate in this community. So, you know, how do you feel about what they've said, Joe? Do you like it or dislike it?
I'm not positive. I think we are winding up complicating something even more than what it was. You know, the language in this is very confusing. I would like to see it simplified. I still think I would rather see a percentage rather than a flat number.
Mhm.
I don't know about the cap. That I haven't really thought about that. You know, this is the first I've looked at this here, so I just,
If I can take a moment to clarify the cap, I'm
Yeah.
just not sure.
I think the concern is, and the Director of Finance brought this up at our first meeting, he is concerned that just simply putting a dollar amount in and leaving on a per-issue basis, that it does leave the door open. That maybe not this administration, but some future administration could abuse the bonding process and just keep things under that threshold of, say, whatever it is, $2 million, to throw out a number. And they could keep writing things, and there is nothing to stop them except the common council or, just the faith of not going to the public. I mean, technically. Whether they'll do it or something else. I think you'll agree, Peter, right? The language of the charter would allow them to do it.
That's my belief, but there's never been a practice of it in the history of the town.
I realize
So-
that.
So before I go monkeying around with that language, I mean, I want to see if there's been a historical problem. I don't believe there has been with that.
But technically, it can be done.
Technically, under the language of the charter, yeah,
Right.
it can be done.
Okay. Then the cap just eliminates that. It takes that away. Because after you exceed a certain dollar amount of bonding a year, then you must go to referendum. Whether you're under $200,000, $2 million in projects or not. It's the cum effect of all of those. Once you go over, then you have to go to referendum for anything more. Or whatever the cap number is. Forget the $10 million. Could be $5 million. Could be whatever you want to make it. That's what the cap is. It's a safety belt, if you would.
From whom?
From any administration that wants to get around the charter.
But we've never had one. I mean,
Not yet.
So is it a safety belt or is it a restriction?
It's a restriction. It definitely is a restriction.
So is it gonna is it gonna prevent something from happening that would otherwise happen that might be good?
Probably not, because I think that it provides them more flexibility to raise funds than they have currently.
Well, I'm ready to make a motion if you're ready to vote it down or vote it up. Fine.
Doug will entertain a
Go right
motion.
ahead.
I move that section 7-10, paragraph A of the current charter be changed to change the amount that's currently located in there from $500,000 to $2.5 million.
That is the entire motion at this?
That's it.
Okay, motion's been made that we change that number from 500,000 to 2.5 million. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded that we raise that spending cap to $2.5 million. Discussion. Bob?
I don't think we're going anywhere with this. I don't think we're doing anything any different than just raising a dollar amount. People can get around this, and we're giving them more flexibility to bring it in under $2.5 million with no stopgaps. So they can literally write, they got a blank check to write whatever they want, providing the Common Council approves it. I would find it difficult to vote for this, but.
Any other discussion?
I acknowledge.
As chairman, I will lay down my gavel and say that I agree with Bob on that. I do think that since the current language is unclear and we're relying on practice, that we should put language in there that gives a sense of what we think, whether that's an annual cap or per issue cap, allowing them to go more, especially since we're raising it to 2.5 million. Any other discussion?
Would you just, you're saying to leave the 2.5 million, only put language in there saying that that's the annual
That is an annual,
cap.
that is an annual cap that then requires specific.
So if they go
Automatic.
beyond that, it means it's an automatic referendum?
Yes,
But that's
Okay,
not
and
the
it's an
motion on the
annual.
floor.
but that is
no,
not the motion. That, the reason I would vote against the motion
Is, that's what
is
you.
because that's missing. Now, I
Okay.
understand I could amend that Peter's motion,
That's right.
but before I go there, I'd like to make a point. If we looked at this language and we put in the number of .00 0.01, and I may be off on decimal points, you could have an annual cap on bonds of 5.4 million,
Right.
assuming if you thought you wanted to give the mayor and the council the ability to go as high as 5.4 million. Now, if some big company moves in here next year and the grand list goes up by $1 billion or $2 billion, understand you're virtually writing a blank check to that percentage. But we could still work with this language if we wanted to build in flexibility for the future and just put in a very small number. We could put a much smaller number than, I mean, you could put in 0.0005, in which case your annual cap is going to be somewhere around $2.5 million.
Which is equal to your.
Which is equal to the number. And then the question becomes, do we want to provide flexibility for the future, or do we want to be sure that we have a cap and automatic referendum? And it's a philosophical question. Are we looking for flexibility? Because we've had great city government for years and years and years where people have not overspent. That may not always be the case. And the charter can allow, I mean, based on the original proposal, a $10 million annual cap, which would be without the electors approving it. So yeah, it's just a question I have is, and I'm not sure where I am on that, which is why I'm going to vote against probably.
It's very clear.
Good.
I think if the number, if you go to a cumulative cap and a project cap, as those numbers get smaller, the less need there is for them.
Right.
And the idea to keep it simple is appropriate. Because as you lower the cumulative cap, you might as well just make a change to the number that exists. And I think the argument to keep what we've got is because it's always worked. It's never not worked before. Why should we change a winning game?
That's debatable, Paul, and I wished you had been here I wished you didn't have the plumbing problem.
Yeah, we wish you didn't have a capital project problem.
But what really comes to the surface is when you look at the capital project backlog of the number of projects that's in the, quote, urgent category. They keep being pushed out and pushed out and pushed out. And one of the reasons, the input to us last week was the charter itself is a barrier to developing a better capital project process and moving these projects along. Those are not my words, those are Dennis Efron's words. And you know, that's why it goes hand in hand with the bonding and the capital project. I do believe that, while it's a separate topic, that's an area that I think the city needs to pay a lot more attention to. And I would encourage you, it was in the handout, if you have it, take a look at the capital project piece. I mean, it is disturbing. It really is disturbing.
I view that as a management issue, not a charter issue. But the other question is, if we take out the 500,000 and put in a percentage,
Of what?
whatever number you want, and that way it's flexible. So as the grand list goes up,
Again, we tried that using net assets last week, and that didn't work. The charter is maybe a more stable and base, but as you point out, that could have some pretty wild swings. So from a year where you're going at one level and you reevaluate, you know, like this year went from 5 billion to 7 billion. I mean, that's a substantial increase. So even a small percentage could almost double the amount that you.
That's the net asset number, you're saying?
No, I'm talking about the grand list. It's gone from 5 billion, I think he said, to 7 point some billion.
7.6.
So, I mean, that was a substantial jump, and I know some of the residents have been complaining about, you know, their appraisals, so. I like the idea of being flexible. I think The cap makes sense, your point is well taken, that if you start lowering that cap, then you're defeating the purpose. I mean, the project or the issue, if you will, becomes, you know, only slightly different from the total cum cap.
And actually, it's more restrictive, the way I originally proposed it.
I think the cap is more restrictive than we're currently operating on. Although, I will say, what Peter is correct, they have never abused the policy, but it's not saying they can't do it.
Any other discussion?
We've got a motion on the floor.
We have a motion on the floor, and that motion is, make sure I've got it right, that we raise in paragraph A, the $500,000 number to $2.5 million.
That's correct. Want to take a vote on it?
I'll try your minds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. Motion passes. Well, aren't we glad we're not doing city clerk tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
We adjourn.
Do you want to adjourn? As I told everybody, Jean Natale will not be here. The next thing on our discussion was discussion of certain Danbury authorities and entities created by the Special Act. I believe Rick Gottschalk was going to be here for that, and he is not. Do we want to table that until Rick can be here to lead us through that?
Before we do table it,
Yes.
can I ask, Bob, that's an issue, you first raised the question that caused us to look at it. Could you explain that a little bit more, that, what we're referring to in that? So when we have a better idea when we meet next time?
Oh, that's number 4?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We changed, there was a change to, and I forget which section it was in, to build in state statutes update, and they created a special act that essentially allowed the parking authority to go out and issue bonds without going to referendum. The point that was raised was the parking authority in the past has come to the city of Danbury and asked for backing of the full faith backing of the bonds by the city of Danbury. And they have done it in order to get lower rates and things like that, and a lower bond rating. When they do that, the city of Danbury becomes liable for that bond rating in case they default. And that will never get to public referendum, the way it is worded. The state statutes allows it to happen, allows the Common Council to apply full faith backing of the city of Danbury, and will not go to referendum. The question I raised is, isn't that in violation of the intent of what our charter is currently about when the city backs bonds, that since they're liable for it, that it shouldn't go to referendum? And the initial feedback, I believe, from Rick was that they could do that and it is legal and would not require a referendum. But when he researched it, he said that we can override a special act. Am I using the right language?
You're using the right language.
We can override a special act of the state by building it into the charter, saying that it should fall into the charter provisions of the city of Danbury, should that arise. So if the parking authority wants to go out and issue bonds without full faith backing of the city, they can do so. If they want the full faith backing of the city, then it would fall under the charter for bonding. And what we've done here, if we follow currently, by example, it would be if the bond was over $2.5 million, it would go to referendum. And that was the discussion to be had, and I think we wanted Rick's input
Rick was gonna come
on
back
what
to
the next
us.
step
Yeah.
we need to do. And then as a commission, we should decide if we want to build that into the charter in a manner that would deal with this full faith funding.
And
Did I
just,
say it right?
Yes,
I think you
Thank
did,
you.
yeah. And just for the record, it's section 5-3 of the,
Thanks.
and we did amend language because there is Special Act number 557 and Special Act number 846. We added that language. And then we discovered that, based on Bob's questioning, that in effect the city can bond as many parking garages as we
Right.
want, so.
It's all there, folks.
So we hope you're happy. Okay, so, do I need a motion to table that?
I don't believe so. We're not gonna
Okay,
reach
then,
it. We'll
okay,
put it
then
on
we'll,
the next agenda.
any more discussion on that?
No.
Seeing none, we'll move on. Am I in the right place?
You're on 5.
We're on 5.
Yeah, commission will discuss proposed public communication.
Right.
Bob, did you have some?
Yes, I think that's what Peter sent out, and I got too many folders here. I don't know where the hell I'm at.
If everybody remembers, we wanted to send an update to the mayor and the common council, just to let them know where we were.
It's this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No wonder I couldn't find it. It's right in front of me.
What we were supposed to do, right?
It's this.
Yep.
You need it?
Yeah. Just trying to make sure my systems work.
Excuse me, just a minute.
Yeah. Okay.
Trying to use this taking hold.
Okay, do you see the, did anyone have a chance to review this before the
I
meeting?
did.
Okay, any questions or comments regarding?
I think it's a great idea. I think Bob did yeoman's work assembling this and actually carefully reviewing what we've done so far. Sometimes you don't feel you're accomplishing as much when you go from meeting to meeting, and I think we should adopt it, approve it, and disseminate it.
Okay. Shall we update the bonding language since?
I think it's fine the way it is. If he wants, yeah, maybe we can change that and then just approve it as a communication that we wish to disseminate to
Okay.
the council, and I'll see if I can get it posted on the website.
There's a copy.
I have no,
And all it is basically an update,
Yeah.
what we've done and where we're going.
Yeah. Hand it to technical. Yeah.
Okay,
Really?
may I entertain a motion from somebody that we?
I move that we adopt Bob's progress report and disseminate it to the people that he recommends, which I think would be the council, the common council, various department chairmen within the city of Danbury, and see that it get posted on the city website.
Okay. And do we want, as part of that motion, that we update the bonding language?
That's fine. I think it should just go out as soon as possible.
Okay,
So
then you know what, we'll get it out right away. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We will instruct the vice chairman to get on with it then. Okay, number 6, also from Bob, put together special areas of focus and selection of commission meeting dates for addressing various issues. Does everyone have that along with proposed dates?
No,
Looks like this.
no. That I don't have. Is that
Okay,
it?
here's a couple. Peter? Did you guys get that?
I have it.
Okay. And Paul's got it. Okay.
There you go. It's right there. Get it over.
Hey, we did good work while you were gone. We approved your letter to the mayor and the common council and department heads as you so desire.
Let me slip back out of the room.
Yeah, well,
Now we can see who's impeding progress here,
Yeah.
can't we, huh? All right, well, let's see what we can do to slow things down again.
All right, now we're back on the dates for future meetings and things, and I might have just given away all your copies.
Yeah, I got
Oh,
You
that's
have-
all right, that's all right, I can get one. I'll lean over your shoulder.
I'll have
That's
to
not
go
a
back
problem.
on the room and check it out again.
If you have the one that says the year of 2007, that was a plant, and see if Peter could pick it up. And he didn't, he just passed it on. It should be 2008. I was reliving my history.
Yeah, look on the dates on the right-hand side. There were 2007s listed.
The one you have is 2008. That
Right.
was the one I corrected today.
Oh,
You have what, 2007, Peter?
No.
no.
Oh, that was the one I wrote off today.
I do.
Yeah, do you? Yes.
Ah,
See, I was
Okay.
reliving history there. Okay.
Well, those, I'm not finding mine.
And there was a bunch of them around here.
You know, Carlo, and other commissioners, this proposed scope of review, it sort of rivets our attention on issues to be addressed in the future. And I think Bob, when he drafted this, had a great idea, because we need to figure out when we need to hear from people to give us some expertise.
Right.
We had a little discussion in the last meeting from Dennis Elford and David St. Hilaire. David came back again, but I'm certain that we're gonna need input on many of these things from either the present office holders or even better, maybe other people in city government or people who have to deal with city government on, for example, like the planning and zoning. I'm not sure everybody on this commission has a handle on what the zoning commission does necessarily, or what the planning commission does. So we're gonna need to invite people here to explain that to us and why it may need to be fixed. So Bob generated this, and again, it was a lot of work, but it's a great idea. I don't know if we need to agree on the dates necessarily, but it provides a way for us to kind of like work ahead and plan accordingly. So I don't know if you want to vote on this today or ask the commission to vote on it the next time.
Yeah, I think the key to this is, if we can set dates, we can then get people to come to the meetings, so that
Right.
instead of giving people a week or 2 weeks' notice, they may know that the last week of April, they need to be here, so that we can start letting people know what we would like to be doing. Because obviously, we're at the end of March, and I'm not sure that we need to vote on this. But if this is a reasonable schedule, what we've got to now do is re-plug in the city clerk and the treasurer functions, because obviously we've slid that date. And maybe just move everything back, and then let the various people know that we would like them on various dates. Bob, you also had a list of people that we
Right,
we
I
wanted to
think
speak to,
it's-
which is next on that list. The question becomes, for each of those topics, who else do we need to invite? Because this is just, a list of people that come to mind, but based on your experience in city government or wherever, who else do we need to invite? So that we can then send them a letter and say, we would like to see you on, and give them a date that we think we're going to be making progress towards their part of the charter. So the question is,
If I can offer a suggestion, if we go back to the area of focus in item 2, the clerk and the treasurer, why don't we just move that to the bottom? Instead of moving everything else down, and just plan on the next meeting, tackle this planning and zoning, and then decide who in the planning and zoning area that we need to talk to, and then we'll just pick up the city clerk and the treasurer function. I don't know how long of a discussion that's going to be, but I think we probably should be able to take care of that within a meeting or two at most. So that would keep us on schedule here if we do that.
Okay.
a meeting or two?
Yeah,
Certainly
if-
break tradition.
Yeah, well, I don't know that we're finished with bonding yet.
Basketball's over.
basketball is not over. I'm going to Tampa to the Final Four.
Good for you,
All right.
and I'll be cheering with you.
All right.
So the next meeting is going to be planning and zoning. We'll have 2 dates with them, if you agree.
Yes, absolutely.
you'd like
Now,
to
the
do?
question, now,
Next
who do we
meeting,
want to
planning and
ask? So
zoning.
obviously, Dennis.
I think Dennis, any other item, any other people that in this planning and zoning?
How about this? I will contact Dennis and I'll ask him if he thinks there's anybody else we should talk to.
Okay.
I think I can get a straight answer from
Okay.
him.
All right.
Good.
Should, you know, would members of the zoning board be here? Peter?
Excuse me?
Would members of the zoning board be appropriate? Maybe not that same night, but,
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I would think.
The zoning, planning and zoning commissions, and invite the commissioners. That's a great idea.
Mhm.
Okay.
Inviting all of them, or are you inviting like?
Any who are interested in
Okay.
attending.
Yeah.
so Dennis, we're gonna invite for April 14th, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Do you wanna make that contact, Peter? or-
I will.
Okay.
Okay, and then he'll give us a list of names that we might invite for the following meeting. And again, if he gives
Or
you
the
the list for the 14th, Peter, let's invite them and get as many people that we can. Okay, then municipal elections. Do we invite the head of the council?
Well, if we're gonna discuss all these terms, I think first thing we need to do is send out for suits of armament. Boy, that literally touches on many
Don't
folks.
miss anything.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if we want to invite the mayor for that, or if we want to invite members of the common council. I think at a minimum, yeah, those two.
I think that's a lightning rod for any of these people with comment.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
Well, we have to address it.
Yeah. Well, we
Well,
don't
or
have.
actually, we don't have to
We
address it.
don't, we don't have to address it.
We honestly
Do
don't
you-
have to
Do
address
you
it.
want to look at that? I mean, because we could simply say, it'll never get passed, it will simply, it could sink everything we do.
Right.
And it's not worth doing. Or we could say, we ought to tell them what we really think.
Yeah, I disagree with this. It might sink everything we do. It might sink that particular item, because
Okay.
they can, you know, go
Cherry
through
pick.
and pick and choose. You know, they can cherry pick what they want to do it. So if we feel a strong need.
Hold on, Bob.
That must mean we have to leave.
No. Bob's making a good, you know, these aren't as long as those small little tapes.
Paul, what do you think?
Don't say anything, Paul.
It's 8:45, so let's try to wrap this up.
Okay.
Any comments, questions?
We would, it has been discussed so many times with me. I just feel like there's a number of people that want us to entertain it. But I don't want to, if we're not going to do anything or not give it serious consideration, then no, I don't want to consider it. But I just think it's to avoid an issue. If our decision to not look at it is our decision, is our comment on what, I don't know, it just seems like we should let people come and let us hear what they have to say.
Okay.
I agree.
I hate, it doesn't mean we have to do anything.
We've already gotten some input, by the
That's a good
way,
point.
from the public with regard to extending the terms of the office. And we have had pro and cons on that subject from individuals. I think the not common council, but the chair of the Democratic Party, De Silva, had indicated that he was not in favor of it. But we had, I think, 2 or 3 private citizens who recommended that we look at it and were in favor of extending the terms of office of the mayor and to look at other offices as well. So the proposal has been put before us. It's, you know, it's up to us whether we choose to do it, you know, to recognize it or not. But it's not going to be an easy task, but I think it's one that is worthwhile, worth the commission's attention.
Anybody else?
No, I
I'm
think we
ready
should
for the
look at
debate
it.
on that, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, then you know what?
Definitely.
Let's put it out there, let's post it, and hope that we get a lot of discussion. Do we want to invite the heads of the political parties and obviously elected officials? Do we want to do a special notification, or just have it there, and people that come and talk to us, and then we'll have our debate?
Is that covered in our communication thing? I thought it was.
Maybe what we ought to do is to make this page 2 of this consistent with what we're doing here and put dates on here.
We'll update this and add
Right,
it.
this on this.
That's fine.
Okay?
Yep.
And they will see when we're doing it.
Okay.
Okay.
And well, how did we leave this? Is this going to be issued to the mayor and common council? or
Yes.
what?
Yes.
Yes.
What about to the public?
Yes.
It was,
It will be
okay.
posted.
So we'll have covered all the bases.
Perfect.
How's that?
Perfect.
Okay.
No, I'll just, literally pull page 2 of that and stick it on here,
Okay.
okay?
And then we'll do the organization review, and then we'll do charter section by section. Anything else on that we need to talk about?
I just had one other question. If we're talking about municipal elections and offices and positions and stuff, where are we putting in this city clerk and treasurer functions then? Because if we're also talking about changing those jobs,
Or eliminate them.
And the organization
need-
review is going to be long and extended, so the
That
question
could
is,
fall in a number of elected positions, actually. Because those 2 positions are elected positions.
well, then you'll never get through that in one meeting in May.
right,
No,
so we need to do,
it says begin.
Okay. So shall we invite the city clerk to come to that meeting also?
We've invited her twice. If she wishes to come, then I think.
Well, I'd like to give her
Right.
more notice than we've given her, just,
yes,
okay? Okay. Let's plug her into
and the treasurer.
Yeah, let's plug them in for the 12th, and that'll be the start of our process, and that ought to get
I
some.
mean, we can, it can fall in here, but we can still have her come up, as we have tried before. And I think last time Jeannie wasn't feeling well, I don't.
Right.
Yep.
And this just wasn't convenient.
Okay, so we have an idea of our calendar so that we can start communicating with people a little bit sooner. Next meeting, we will start with planning and zoning and hoping that Dennis and the zoning commissioners can come to that. Last thing on our agenda for tonight is review of Chapter 1 of the Charter.
Right, we keep pushing that off. Can we start that and spend 10 minutes on it?
Since we're doing it, I would recommend to you that you have a piece of paper that looks like this from Diane,
Okay.
where she
Yeah.
compared all the charters, or charters from cities of like size. And I did speak with her about it tonight, because she had some fairly strong opinions. If you look at the first page of our charter, it gives you the geographical limits of the city, which you will see several charters have nothing to do with. And what she liked was New Britain's, which says that the territorial limits and boundaries of the city comprise the same territory embraced within a description on a map entitled blah, 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 on file with the engineer of the city.
That sounds reasonable.
Short and sweet. If indeed we want to go through and start shrinking this charter instead of, it goes on here, obviously, for about a page and a half.
If I can start with
Yeah.
one piece of this.
Yes.
The notion of a preamble is offered in a modern city charter model. And it's been discussed among a few folks. How do we feel about adopting a preamble to our charter? The preamble, in effect, could be, Peter, you had some ideas?
Yes, I think we should have a preamble. I think we should have, the city of Danbury has a purpose. It has energy, it has a seal, a preamble. It would be appropriate, and it's an appropriate place to get input from our current elected officials as to the preamble.
Okay. How do we go about doing that? Does everybody agree?
What's the purpose of the preamble again?
I just think it just states, it's just a preamble of the city, the people of the city of Danbury, in order to govern themselves, have, formed the city government, and we just would just state that, and this is our instrument of formation, this charter.
So John Adams?
Obviously stealing from the Constitution of the United States.
You've been
Yes,
watching John Adams?
I read the book.
he's got HBO.
Actually, I don't have HBO. and I
Oh,
didn't
you
watch
read the
that.
book.
You know, could we-
John Adams wasn't a big player in the Constitution. I know, Paul, it was the Declaration of Independence for him.
Would it be appropriate to incorporate the mission statement as part of that preamble?
I think so.
Yes.
You know, but I don't have a copy of it with me to read to everybody right now, of the mission statement. That's what
I think it's
I
running
do.
across the screen
Yes, it is.
downstairs, yes.
Yeah, it's should be right there in the annual.
Right.
Yeah.
We know it's in there.
I don't need to.
If it's not there, I think I know where I can find it.
It has
There
to.
it is.
Yeah, it's in that presentation that the mayor made.
Mary, would you like to read it?
Our mission statement. The City of Danbury's mission is to ensure a superior quality of life for its citizens by providing the most cost-effective municipal services while preserving the cultural, historical, and natural resources of the city. We are committed to working with citizens to enhance Danbury's position as a premier place to live, work, and raise a family in a traditional yet progressive community.
Fine.
Would
That's
you-
what I'd like.
You would
Would
like
you-
to adopt that?
I would like to adopt
Would
that.
you would make that the preamble to the charter?
Yes,
Okay, is that a motion?
I'll move that become the preamble of the City of Danbury Charter.
Motion's been made, a second.
Second.
Discussion.
I think it's a great idea. I wish I'd have thought of it.
He wish he had thought of it. Any other discussion? I will try your minds. All in favor of adding the mission statement as a preamble to the city charter, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We now have a preamble.
All right.
Peter, do you want this? You look this up?
I have it somewhere. I just can't find it.
So Peter is going to take care of the
Somewhere
details
in
with
these
Rick.
papers.
Is that it?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Okay, then, do we need section 1-1, incorporation?
Yes.
And we would leave that untouched?
We do require that.
Section 1-2 is the territorial limits of the city, where we're north 23 degrees, 45 minutes west.
I make a motion that this section be eliminated from the charter and substituted with language that refers to a map on file within town clerk's office, Peter?
I would think
Was it
it
town
would be
clerk?
the town clerk's office.
There is one on file in the town clerk, and I don't know if that's the official map. I think I need to verify that before we vote on that, just to, and I
Okay,
apologize for
okay,
that.
that's fair.
No, that's
fair.
okay, we can run that by.
Okay, I withdraw
Rick.
that motion.
Okay, but we know where we're going with it.
Right.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
section 1-3, rights and obligations.
I don't have a problem with that.
It says the city shall continue to be liable for its debts and obligations. If we got rid of that, it would probably save us a great deal of bonding issues.
We could really create some problems, couldn't we? We could be up
After
to
8:30,
submission.
things just
Yeah,
fall
we
apart.
just authorize going up and saying we're not responsible. I love that approach.
Oh, did I say something wrong?
You're a man of few words, but when you say them, they have meaning.
Obviously.
I mean, this wipes out all contracts, everything. Right
You know
there.
what I think this language was when they combined the city and the town. That's what it feels like. And nobody's touched it since. You get that feeling, Peter?
I do, but there's some of this language that we're required to operate under the statutes that we are legally responsible for, that can't be changed. Not special act, but statutes. Other parts, I think just have to remain. The first sentence, for example, would have to remain.
Right,
Should we just leave the section?
leave it alone.
I guess we should leave it alone.
Yeah,
I mean, if
we
you're trying
could-
to shorten it, we could probably take out a sentence here or there, or might modify one.
We can ask Rick at the next meeting if you'd
Okay.
like. Okay, and so then section 1-4, general grant of powers.
This is an important, in my opinion, this is an important section because it basically says that any powers that are granted to us, we take under the statutes.
Mhm.
Okay. So this is okay, 1-4.
Yes.
Okay.
1-5, one of the things that struck me, and I don't know if it belongs in this section or not, but as I read through the, yeah, this is a proposed 1-5,
Oh,
okay? Stick with me.
okay.
I'll get you
I
there.
don't have that.
How's the shortening
Okay.
process going?
This is the new one. Again, I don't know if it's applicable to this section, but nowhere in the charter that I read that what form of government we have accepted to govern the city of Danbury.
And you, so you're referring to whether we have a manager form of government or?
Right.
Oh, but it does say it there.
What I was going to say, the mayor and common council form of government, and describe in it. Where do you see where it's at?
Well, under this section,
It's under the elections, but
And
in terms
officers.
of the form of government, it tells you what is there, but it doesn't really state anywhere that
that
the
is,
citizens of Danbury have opted to go to a mayor-council form of government, per se.
Flat out stated. Okay. I don't see why we can't say that.
First of all, is it necessary, and two, is it appropriate if we do put it in?
Bob, in the interest of clarity and the interest of somebody picking this up and trying to figure out what type of government the city of Danbury has, you're gonna state it up front. I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
I think that makes sense.
So, if you want, I'll draft up some words
Okay,
that
no.
goes along with this, and I'll come back at the next meeting,
Okay.
and we can do that, if everybody agrees.
before. It
That
should
sounds
come
good.
before 1-3 then.
Maybe, yes. Yes,
Seeing
because
as
you start referring to the
1-3
mayor.
refers to the mayor, so whatever you're doing.
So this should
needs
come
to
up-
come before 1-3.
Renumber it.
Okay.
Mhm.
I'll just do the wording and then
Yeah,
the
I'd work
numbering
with
thing.
Rick on
will-
that. He'll give you some
Okay.
ideas, but,
All right.
okay.
Hey, we got through this.
I've
Paul,
lost-
your idea, we've come through the first chapter, huh?
I've lost
Goes
my.
way back down.
I've lost my agenda. Here, thank you.
Says, go home.
Oh, well, we're done reviewing chapter 1. So, next meeting, we will start planning and zoning. We will review chapter 2 of section 2 of the charter, and review this language and any other issues on that at this point.
Well, section 2 is on elections and officers,
So-
so it's
so
gonna
we
be kind
shouldn't-
of hard to do that
Okay, so
until
we
we
don't-
get to the,
In section 3 is city
schedule.
clerk's
Can't
office.
fool Joan.
right,
Boy, I'll tell you.
You're absolutely right.
so we have to
So
switch
we'll
them.
wait till we go through all those, yeah, because the rest.
And the next
We do
meeting may
the-
be long.
So we'll do the planning and zoning, and then we would have to do,
Planning and zoning's next, right?
Okay.
Yep.
Yep, P and Z.
and.
So we should probably invite them as soon as possible, so we will know whether or not they can make it, and if they
Yes.
can't, we will adjust.
Mhm.
Okay?
And
I
if they
will-
can't make it, maybe what we can do, if we can agree now, we'll grab this city
Go to
clerk
city clerk or
position
treasurer.
next time, and then move this to the following.
Yeah, and then we'll bring up bonding again, just for the fun of it.
Yeah, I think we need to reopen bonding. And
I
the
will
reason
enter-
You're
being,
unhappy with the vote.
I will
the
entertain.
reason being that 3 key people were not here tonight.
No,
so-
we're not bringing up, we voted for it. By the way, the rules for revoting is you had to be voting in the majority.
Right.
You would then have to make a motion to
To rescind the
reopen it.
motion.
Right, but it can be reopened by a person that voted for it, right?
Yes, that is correct.
My cousin, Three Finger Louis Gavone, is gonna stop by your house.
I will entertain a
He
motion.
can discuss a bonding with you.
This is great, I can't wait to see the
You made the
emails.
motion.
Let's see,
told him I
Robert
was
King
gonna do that.
at danbury.ct.com. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
And third.
Discussion.
I'm in.
How much fun, you can't have this much fun without buying a ticket.
Yeah, and just think of all the pay we're getting for this, too. You know?
Thank you, everybody, and keep watching TV, you'll see yourself.
Good luck with your plumbing, Paul.
Yep,
What happened, in the wall?
and
In
it
the,
will.
what I think is a waste pipe, it's 3 inches.
Uh-huh.
It was all copper,
Something,
and then they put in a new bathroom. So there's PVC. There's a band coupling between the copper